What's up, folks? This is Dan from Discern, and these are my thoughts on the new mixtape from Trip Lee, The Waiting Room. Trip Lee is a rapper, author, and pastor from Atlanta, Georgia. He got his start about 10 years ago when he became a defining member of the 116 Clique, the hip-hop collective from Texas, and their broader label, Reach Records, along with artists like Lecrae, Tadashi, Sho Baraka, Jay Son, and Thistle. Trip Lee was a part of the movement that birthed the rise of Christian hip-hop, greatly expanded the audience, and brought a lot of new people, including myself, into that community. On his own, under the name Trip Lee, he's released 5 studio albums so far, his most recent being 2 years ago, the album called Rise. Through the years, Trip's musical style and production has varied greatly, from corny crunk beats sounding like an amateur but just doing the best they can, to really trunk-knocking slammers with top-notch, high-quality presentation, and from sappy, eye-rolling rap ballads to richly emotional tracks with carefully crafted production and matching lyricism. Over the years, we've seen, a steady rise as Trip Lee's music has noticeably improved with each release, both in sound / musical quality and in just overall songwriting. But he has never been very focused in his sound. Each of his albums touch on a variety of flavors and subgenres of hip-hop, but never centralizing on a specific identifiable sound. If you had to ask me to identify that Trip Lee sound, I probably couldn't do it because it's not categorically consistent enough to pin down. But through it all, I certainly could identify his signature Southern accent, as his pronouncing of words like gospel are forever lodged in my brain in a good way. On this new release called The Waiting Room, Trip Lee's inconsistency of sound and style, or just more his lack of a definable sound, settles in right at home because this is a mixtape, which is an overtly stated collection of different styles and sounds. It's not necessarily trying to be a unified whole. But this album does have a minor thread of thematic unification. The theme of The Waiting Room looks at all of life as a waiting room, which is actually a metaphor that comes from a line from his album The Good Life. Looking at life this way, as a temporary holding place in which we wait, it frames all the pains and trials and troubles we encounter and anticipates the restoration and reconciliation that will come one day. And as the cover art makes clear, this waiting room is filled with a broad variety of people, with a broad variety of backgrounds and experiences and personalities, different joys and pains. As the album unfolds, Trip Lee speaks to emotional highs and lows, moments and events, both in the positive and negative, some personal to him and some beyond his own experience, and the strength of God's faithfulness and unfailing love through Christ that permeates throughout. The first track on this mixtape, Clouds, is the first of 4 tracks here produced by fellow Reach Records artist Gavi. The song starts with a pitched up and modulated, indiscernible vocal sample, which actually turns out to be Gavi himself, paired with a melodically matching music box sort of sound. The trap-inspired beat drops at the top of the first verse with bellowing 808s and cicada hissing hi-hats. It's a really great sound. And Trip's vocal flow is in step with the beat. Actually, he's almost cutting off his sentences short, splitting them between the bars, which is a style he carries through both verses on this track. The production here is really melodic and sort of pop-inspired, but blended with this sort of layered hip-hop beat. And Trip also sings the hook here, actually. He sort of lays down a simple but effective vocal performance. Too Cold, the next track, was the first single, actually, to be released off this mixtape. Tripp's lyrics creatively describe how he is frigid and immovable. He's frozen in place. He's undisturbed, unaltered by what people want him to be or what they want him to do. The song has a lot of clever metaphors and wordplay relating to cold weather, slippery ice, below zero temps, stuff like that. I think the production is a little stale, not nearly as hard-hitting as I think the instrumental seems to be aiming at. But the next track, Lord Have Mercy, definitely has the most hard-hitting production on this mixtape. Production by Gavi here on this track as well. The verses would be enough to do it for me with more of that multi-layered trap style. I mean, you got the claps, hi-hats, snares, more. I mean, you got that mixed with this low-end rumbling, knocking bass. But the hook just ratchets that up a little bit more with the low end magically filling every corner of the mix. And Tripp lays out some really smart lyricism on this track too. He's talking about brokenness both in his heart and in the world. And he does a good job of focusing into each of those areas. In the first verse, he looks inward at the darkness of his own heart and sums it up elegantly, I think, with the line, "If only God can judge me, what lawyer gonna take me on?" You know, very stark but true description. The second verse tackles social issues, more external issues, in particular civil rights issues, both of the 60s and of today. And then the third verse, where the beat falls away and a soft piano comes in, the lyrics turn into a view towards, I guess, the eternal mercy. When you think of the name of the track, Lord Have Mercy, the ridding of internal and external sins and sins' effects. Again, he's got some really great lyrics here. Does a great job balancing the hopeful anticipation of the future with this persistent nagging despair about present circumstances. The next two tracks, IDK, which means I don't know, for those who aren't hip with the cool kids like me, and the following track, Ready, both feature some of the most cutting and authentic lyrics on the mixtape. I Don't Know expresses a deeply honest and frustrated heart that just can't feel that God actually hears his prayers, that God actually cares. The minimal production on this track keeps the lyrics in the forefront, letting their sharp edges lay bare. Sharp edges like this one, directed at God, the line, "My homie lost his son, that's crazy, and I know he prays, but I heard your son raised after like 3 days. Strange." That's a bold line, you know, but emotionally honest. And then there's this one speaking about thinking God isn't coming through, not seeing him help where we feel he should help. This one it's brilliant, theologically packed. "I don't see it, maybe I don't get him. He must be asleep, call me when he's risen." Man, to feel as if God's dead, to feel as if Christ has not in fact risen from the dead, that's a deep expression of doubt and pain, really, really well put. The song ends then with an outro quoting Psalm 13, where the words speak about God's unfailing love in the rescuing reality of the gospel. The permanent goodness of God shown in Christ is the final word here, you know, bringing truth to bear on this emotional pain expressed in the song. And the track Ready has probably my favorite vocal hook on the mixtape, sung by Dimitri McDowell. This song is another sort of pop-inspired, heavily melodic track. The song is about Tripp Lee dealing with his dad's death and his relation with his own impending death. The lyrics in the hook especially, but definitely in the verses as well, are so powerfully countercultural. To sing with a confident readiness about death is just a foreign feeling to the typical human experience. It's a miraculous feeling to have, you know, ready for death. But it's actual knowing that Christ has defeated death and destroyed its holding, gripping power. As he says, speaking to death, we won't have much to grieve for when all your winds are repoed and the reaper reaps what he sowed. There again, more subtly skilled lyricism and flow as he uses the word reaper in the context of death to refer to Christ, the defeater of death. Just brilliant how he does that. The next track, Still Unashamed, features Tadashi on a verse, actually the only rap feature on this mixtape. The song is a recall to the 116 theme of Not Ashamed of the Gospel. It's a theme we've seen from other Reach Records artists within the last year or so, as Reach Records has been the target of a lot of hate. It seems like these artists have felt compelled to come out and reclaim their unashamed theme. I don't think the lyrics here are very compelling, especially the Tadashi verse, which seems like a lot of hot air more than anything. Trip Lee's verses are decent. He's definitely more or very reasonable and careful about balancing their notable stylistic changes with their too cold and frozen convictions about Christ that haven't changed. Production-wise, I feel a strong influence from the recent influx of gospel music into hip-hop that we've seen this year. There's these gospel choir samples at the top of the song and throughout from the 1982 Andre Crouch song, We Are Not Ashamed. And maybe it's just me hearing it, but I swear he's imitating a Kanye vocal style at times throughout the song. That would be fitting with the production style, but, I don't know, maybe I'm just hearing things. The next track, the seventh track, Money Up, chills things out a bit with bass and drum grooves that lay back in its seat. Trip Lee continues to drop really flavorful lyricism and effortless flow. I mean, he's really bringing it here, even in a down-tempo, sort of more backseat track like this. And this track has some of his snazziest phrases within the whole mixtape. And to top it all off, he ends this track in a genius way. The whole song has been following the tale of a guy who's been dreaming about riches and the pursuit of stuff. And the whole song plays out, as it plays out, the guy's dreams are coming true. He can basically buy anything he wants. He can have anything he wants. And at the end, he says, something's missing. That feeling's starting to lurk too. But I got it all, so I don't know what to pursue. And suddenly, quite abruptly, the vocal flow just cuts off. That's the last thing he says, in a sense. And the idol of material pursuits leaves this guy feeling empty, not fulfilled. And Trip Lee mirrors this emptiness by just cutting off the vocal flow, leaving the track feeling empty and bringing the song to a pretty quick end. Out My Way, the next track is my least favorite on the mixtape, really. The production, the hook, the vibe, it's all driving that sort of southern rap style, more reminiscent of his older stuff, but still modern in its production. But the swagger of the instrumental and the lyrics just doesn't really translate. Instead, I think this track mostly falls flat. The second to last track, Longer, makes a sort of unique production decision, as there's a lo-fi acoustic guitar recording that sits hard panned to the left and plays throughout almost the whole song. It's kind of clashing with the rest of the mix. It's like looking at, with your ears. If you're kind of looking at that acoustic guitar, it almost makes it worse. It makes it harder to ignore or let blend in once you notice it. But if you can just forget about it, if you can look away with your ears, the production sounds fine. Lyrically, this is a really personal song, as Trip Lee talks about living with chronic fatigue syndrome, a disease he has that's very hard to understand, let alone live with. There is no known cure. There is not much even known about this disease at all. And it's hard for Trip, primarily, living with this disease, but it's also hard for people he works with or lives around. And this thorn in his side encompasses a lot of his life. It affects the people around him more than just Trip. And he does a good job in this song of widening the view and showing you the broad effects of this struggle in his life, not in a whiny or mopey way, but in a hopeful and trusting way, asking God, how long will it be until you take it away, trusting in him to respond to that as he wills. And the song that wraps this mixtape up, Billion Years, which was the other single released from this mixtape, is another pop-inspired track relying heavily on the dreamy and memorable vocals in the hook. The verses actually pull back from that melodic feel, featuring mostly, like a deep bass and short sampled vocal snippets, really snappy track production. This is a great song, I think, thematically and lyrically to cap this mixtape off. It ties up many of the loose ends and sort of various stories told throughout the mixtape with the ultimate ending to those stories, permanent and perfect restoration in heaven, the full realization of redemption, dwelling in the presence of the Lamb who was slain. All in all, at the end of the day, this is a pretty great mixtape. The production is crisp and clear. It's really top-notch, really great, sweetly layered at times too. Perfect for listening again and again, discovering new snippets and instrumental moments. And speaking of listening again, the lyrics Trip Lee presents are seriously admirable, both from a poetic level and a theological level. He's providing some sweet food for the soul. Food that both looks good, the metaphors, the word choice, the flow, and it's good for you, theologically and spiritually. This mixtape is actually Trip Lee's shortest release yet at only 40 minutes. So if you get a chance to check it out, I really recommend it. I do. If you've liked his last two records, especially The Good Life and Rise, I really think you'll dig this one. There are links in the description box below this video for you to hear this mixtape for yourself. There's also a link to Trip Lee's Twitter in case you want to follow him over there. And all right, with that, let's wrap this up. Thank you for watching this album review. If you enjoyed this video, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. New album reviews just like this release every Friday. Stay tuned for more. If you have a question or a comment for me about this mixtape, about my thoughts about this mixtape, or about something else, you can comment below this video. You could tweet at me at discernreviews, or you could send me an email, discernreviews@gmail.com. Have you listened to this mixtape from Trip Lee? What do you think of it? I personally think this mixtape gets better and better with each listen, which is actually how much of Trip Lee's music has been for me in the past. So hopefully I hear from some of you. Let me know your thoughts. And with that, I will be done here. Thanks for being with me. See you back here next week. Hope this helps. See ya.